Hey everybody, so welcome to part 2 of the video series on guitar pedalboard and pedalboard effects. So today I'm going to be talking about effect order and then setting up your pedalboard. So when you're setting it up, you need to worry about three main things. First of all, obviously the pedalboard itself. So what kind of pedalboard you're going to use to put your pedals on. Secondly, you need to figure out pedal order. So after you have all the pedals from part 1, you could take a look at the pedal order and then see how you're going to lay your pedal board out. And then lastly, you also need to figure out how you're going to power those pedals, so by using a power supply or batteries or etc. So starting with part 1, the pedal board. So this is just a little wooden pedal board here, but there's also different materials that you can use, including metal, and some good brands for that are Pedal Train and Boss. Those are some of the common brands, big name brands. And then I just got mine from a little specialty shop. Sometimes they do it cheaper and then certain dimensions that you want it, so I would shop around if you want to do that. And as you can see, they're kind of angled, so they start off narrower and they get wider, and that's to mount the power supply, but we'll talk about that later. And they also usually have slits in the middle like this, so you could put your cables under and over, as well as run these little cables to power your pedals. So that's just for cable management, these two slits in the middle, as well as this big one out here. Okay, so now pedal order. It's probably one of the most debated over, talked about subjects between guitarists, and there's no real right answer. I'm just going to tell you what's conventional once again. So starting from the right and going to the left. So this is the far right, so this is the first pedal in your chain, and then you're just going to plug this one into your guitar. So this cable goes into your furthest right, and that's where your guitar would go in. And then first we have the tuner, so this goes at the head of the pedal, or the chain, so it could be the most accurate. It's receiving your guitar signal right as it's coming. And you could also use it to mute it, like we talked about in part 1, so that's why you would put it at one of the ends. Some people also do put it at the end, but it's slightly less accurate that way. So next we have these two, and then these are considered filters. So once again, the wah pedal, and then the compressor pedal from last video. So these filters usually go right after the tuner or at the head of the chain if you decide to put this at the end. So these filters go in front, and especially the compressor, you don't want it too far back because it's going to increase the volume of the hiss. It's kind of a sound that you get when you plug your guitar and you're playing high gain or just using a lot of effects at once, but there's this hissing noise that you don't want too much of. So next after that, you have your drive pedals. I only have one on this basic board here, so it could include distortion, fuzz, or overdrive. So your drive pedals go right after your filters, and then it's just enhancing your signal more. So overdrive, you heard how that sounded in the last video, and then fuzz is slightly more overdrive, if that makes sense, and then distortion's in between the middle of overdrive and fuzz. So overdrive is the least, distortion, and then fuzz. So depending on what type of music you play or what type of sound you want, pick the right pedal for you, or use more than one. That's called pedal stacking, drive stacking. Okay, so and after that, near the end of the chain, we have reverb and modulation. So this is the reverb pedal that I used in the last video, just making things sound spacey as a review. And then modulation, all kinds of different noises. You could do more research about that on your own, or I could just make like a whole dedicated video regarding that, but there are a lot of different effects in modulation. So this is multi-effects. It includes delay and modulation. So you want modulation and reverb at the end, because if you did put it in front of the distortion would also make all the echoes and weird noises distort. So you want these to be as clean as possible. And then the loop station, it doesn't really matter where that goes. It's just an extra that you put on your pedal board. I put it at the end here, so since I didn't have anything else. And then at the very, very end, I have my volume pedal. So that can control your signal once again by pushing it up or down, making your guitar louder or softer, or even if you go like this, muting it completely. So just as a review, your guitar is plugging into here, going left, 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 and then I've wired my cable under to start the second row, through the loop and then into the volume, and then this cable goes to your amp. And there's also this. You might be wondering what this is. I'm going to get to the power supply now. So if I just flip my board a little bit, the big block that you see right here is the power supply. And what that basically does is has all these wires that you could plug into your pedals. And these wires supply your pedals with power, and depending on what pedal you're using, they have different power specifications and needs, but you could adjust all that down here and then buy a power supply that suits your needs. So on mine, you could adjust it by flipping these little switches to go between 9 and 12 volts, as well as 4 to 9 volts on the 7 and 8 outputs. And just read up on your pedals to see what you actually need, as well as the number, because if you only have a few pedals, you could just run them on batteries, but as you get more and more, like a medium board of this size, it's more economical to use a power supply like that. And then as well as plugging into an outlet, which are very common at gigs or other shows, and it's just easy to plug and chug. So there you have it. That's the main pedal board setup. So the pedal board itself, the pedal order, as well as the power supply, a quick rundown on what that is. And after you have all those ingredients, it's just putting them together. That's the fun part. So what I use to put my pedals on my board are just a few strips of Velcro, as so, between all of those pedals. And then the power supply, some people can mount it into the back of their board with screws, but I found that Velcro works just fine. It's less work. So, oh yeah, this little hole in the side, you're probably wondering what this is. It's just to let this plug run out the side and then plug into the wall, because you don't want to have to jam it through here or just another little crack. So it's just drilling that into the side makes it a lot easier. So yeah, that's going to be part 2, and then don't miss part 3 where I show you some of my favorite tones for songs and how to dial in a good tone using your pedals and using your amp.